And I want to say praise to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to all of you that are here on the Lord's holy Sabbath day. And also peace to everybody tuning in on the internet. We are streaming live on Facebook at Israel, the Church of Jesus, Toronto. And we also can be found on Instagram at Israel, the Church of Jesus, Toronto. That being said, we will go ahead and get right into the lesson. The title of today's lesson is The Times of the Gentiles. Again, the title of today's lesson is The Times of the Gentiles. And again, this title comes directly out of the Bible. The Bible talks about the times of the Gentiles. So what we're going to do today is get some clarity from the Bible as to who it is referring to when it mentions Gentiles. You know, Gentiles is a concept that is in the Christian community and also in other communities like the so-called Jew community, but it has different definitions. It's taken on different forms throughout the years and seems to have lost its original definition and identity. So we're going to try to establish that today. A lot of people, and we're going to look at a definition from the dictionary because a lot of people understand and have the understanding of the concept, if you are not a Jew, then you are a Gentile. And we're going to see if that's the case in the Bible. We're going to validate that or not. But we're also going to see what the Bible says a Gentile is. And then we're going to get an understanding of what the times of the Gentiles is. And that's actually how we're going to start the lesson. We're going to start the lesson understanding how God operates in the first place and what that concept even means. See, God, the way that he deals with his creation and his people, he looks at lineage. He looks at nations. He looks at families and tribes. That's how he looks at things. You know, this whole concept of, the blanket statement that everyone likes to throw around, the white man. Everybody likes to use that term, the white man. Well, that's not descriptive enough, and it is not clear enough as to who you're talking about when you say that. Or the black man. That's not descriptive enough. And the Lord doesn't even look at us like that. He looks at us from our household, from our family, from our lineage. And he goes from father to father to father. Because if you look in the Bible, God deals with lineage from the perspective of the man. The man carries the seed. Therefore, anytime you see lineage in the Bible, which we're going to look at some, you're going to see the phrase, which was the son of so-and-so, which was the son of so-and-so, which was the son of so-and-so. This is how you determine who comes from who and what the lineage is. You will never see the mention of a mother in a lineage tree in the Bible in terms of this is where that person comes from. It's always from the man. So you are what your father is. So if your father is, if your father is Spanish from Spain, then that is what you are, regardless of what your mother is. That's how the Lord sees things. And the way that he deals with nations and his creations, he gives everybody time to do their thing. He gives everybody time to show what they got, to operate the way they want to operate. And because God is a judge, so what he does is he gives you your time, and then when your time is up, here comes the judgment. And that's how even the end of the world is going to be. Once we have all ran out of time here, then we go to judgment. When we individually run out of time and we pass away, we die. The next thing we know, when we wake up, we will be at judgment. So we're going to take a look at that. Let's go to Daniel 4. Again, the title of the lesson is The Times of the Gentiles. Daniel chapter 4. And we're going to start at verse 17. Daniel chapter 4 and verse 17. And when you get there, my brother, if you can read it as loud as you can. Daniel chapter 4 and verse 17. Okay, my brother, go ahead.
This matter is by decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know.
So we're reading this to understand that we are the living, right? So we are supposed to know something about God. This is the intent of this whole, what we read. To the intent that the living may know, keep going,
that the Most High ruleth in the kingdoms of men, and giveth to whomsoever he will.
So God is dealing directly in the affairs of men. We had a lesson about that a few weeks ago. God is not standoffish in a corner somewhere with some popcorn, watching us do things and saying, oh man, that's messed up. I hope they figure that out. God is directly involved in the things that are going on in this world. It said, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth. So he is in control. When we say God is in control, that's what that means. He ruleth in the kingdom of man and does what? He giveth it to whomsoever he will. Period. So if anybody got some power, God is giving it to them. If anybody got some resources or is in some rulership position, guess what? Are we reading that the Lord is giving that to them, right? For whatever reason, that's on him. But we have to accept the fact that he is in control. The Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whomsoever he will. Keep going.
And setteth up over it the basis of men.
Okay, let's go back 2 chapters to Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 20. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 20. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 20. Okay, brother, go ahead.
Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of the God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings.
What does God do? See, that's what I'm saying. We think that maybe God is too big to be dealing with the affairs that's going on in this world, right? We thinking we the ones making these determinations through elections and stuff like that, right? That's how we think. But the Bible is telling us that God literally removes kings and sets up kings. So what does that mean, right? That means that if somebody gets in office, guess who put them there? Guess who put Donald Trump in office? According to the Bible, the God of Israel put that man in office. It says he set up kings and removed kings, right?
That's right.
That means he took Obama out and he put Donald Trump in. That's what that means. Keep going.
He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that knoweth understanding.
All of it comes from God. But we got to understand how he operates, first of all. He runs it and he determines who has the opportunities to do whatever, right? So now let's go to Genesis 41. Because again, the title of the lesson is the Times of the Gentiles, and we need to understand even what that concept means. So we're going to look at the times of another son of Noah, because we have to understand, and we're going to see that everybody on the planet today comes out of Noah and his 3 sons. If you didn't come out of Noah and his 3 sons, you do not exist. Noah got on the ark with his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And from those 3 sons, everybody on the earth is populated, right? Okay, so again, we're going to identify the Gentiles. But we know who's in control right now. Everybody knows who's in control. That's why everybody's running around screaming the white man. Because the white man, quote unquote, like I like to say, that's a lazy term to use because it's not specific enough. But for all intents and purposes, obviously we know they're running it because everywhere you look, when you look at the top, that's what you see, right? You take the dollar out of your pocket and look at the dollar, you're going to see a picture of a white person. For all intents and purposes. Like I said, I don't like to use that term, but just you understand what I'm saying. But we're going to look at a time when it wasn't like that. It was a time on this planet when it wasn't like that, when there was another son of Noah who was Ham, who was running it. And everybody knows about that civilization. The top tier of that civilization, the top nation in that civilization was Egypt. Egypt is from a different son of Ham. But everybody knows that at one point they ran. Matter of fact, the relics and the residual effect of those civilizations are still to this day around us. So Genesis 41 and verse 53. Genesis 41 and verse 53. Okay, brother, go ahead.
And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt was ended.
Okay, so we know we're in the book of Genesis. We're talking about when the Lord was going to have 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, but he allowed Egypt to be the ones through the hand of Joseph, who was an Israelite. He allowed Egypt to be the one to store up, to be able to take care of everybody during that. Keep going.
And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph has said, and the dearth was in all lands. But in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread.
Okay, who they cried to? They all cried to Pharaoh. Because this was the time that Ham and his sons were running it. And like I said, the pinnacle of that, the pinnacle nation of that was Egypt. But everybody was crying to them when they needed something, right? Now these were, quote unquote, black faces we talking about. So the Lord has given everybody their time. Keep going.
And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, go unto Joseph. What he says to you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth.
So the whole earth was dealing with this famine. But who was the Lord allowing to have the substance and be in control at that time? Keep going.
And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all the countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn.
So all the countries was coming to Egypt, was dealing with the Pharaoh. He had control over what the countries was getting through the hand of Joseph. He put Joseph in control, but ultimately it was the Pharaoh in Egypt who was running it, right? And again, this is common knowledge. We all know, any historian will tell you that at one time this was all ran, the civilization was ran by Egypt. Right? So that's just an example of how God does it. He allowed them to do it their way. And when it was all said and done, he brought the children of Israel out of Egypt. And what did he do? He hardened Pharaoh's heart. Why? So that he could judge the Egyptians, right? And that is exactly what he is going to do to the son of Noah, who is in control right now. Right? And that's why the title of the lesson is the Times of the Gentiles. We have to understand the times that we're living in. If we have a clear understanding of what's going on around us, it'll make it easier to deal with it, and it'll allow us to make better decisions. Are we done with that?
No.
Keep going.
Because that the famine was so sore in all the lands.
Okay, Revelation 12. Again, all we're doing right now is just establishing how God works so that we can even understand the concept when somebody says, what do you mean the times of the Gentiles? Well, right now, the Lord is giving the Gentiles a time to do their thing, a time to run. And again, every son of Noah has had their time. We just read about Ham. Egypt comes out of Ham. Egypt, or the Egyptians at that time were the descendants of Ham. And even when the children of Israel came out of Egypt and went into the land of Canaan, there were some other Hamites who was running it there that the children of Israel had to knock off to get that land. Everything was being ran by the sons of Ham, which is a son of Noah. So we saw that he even gave the son of Ham his time, but let's go even further to see somebody else who he's giving a little bit of time. Revelation 12 and verse 7. Revelation 12 and verse 7. Okay, brother, go ahead.
And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels.
All right, so we know this is talking about a war between Michael and his angels and Satan. None other than Satan the devil. That's who the dragon is, right? Keep going.
And prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven.
Obviously, Satan is not going to win that battle. And he prevailed not, but not only that, he got kicked out of heaven. So he and those who follow him have no residence in heaven anymore. Guess where they are? They are right here with us. Right now, they are here with us. And I'm here to tell you, they ain't in some parallel dimension playing baseball and basketball and not worried about us. They are here messing with us right now. That's the source of all this confusion we see. Keep going.
And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
They cast out into the earth. That's where we are, right? Skip to verse 12. Go ahead.
Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he has but a short time.
Wait a minute. Even the devil got a short time. A short time to do what? A short time to do what he does. A short time for him to do his thing. Because the way the Lord operates, again, He'll give you some time to do what you're going to do. And at the end, it's judgment. And once he casts that judgment, it's over with. There is no more time. Once the Lord sets up his kingdom on this earth, which is what he's going to do, he is not taking anybody to heaven. His goal is to set up a kingdom on this earth. And once he does that, there is no more time for anybody else to operate any other way outside of the way that he has shown that he is going to operate. So now, let's go to Genesis 9. Genesis 9 in verse 18. Genesis 9 and verse 18. So we understand the concept, having your time, because the title of the lesson is Times of the Gentiles. But we know that's how the Lord operates. He gives everybody some time to do the thing. Even now, we have time right now in our lives to do our thing, right? We could be here right now keeping the Sabbath as commanded, or we could be across the street about to fly to a roof. We could do it how we want it, right?
That's right.
But when the Lord says our time is up, our time is up, and we're going to be judged according to these words in this book, and we're going to have to deal with that at that point. So again, Genesis 9 and verse 18. Genesis 9 and verse 18. Okay, brother, go ahead.
And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, and Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of the Canaan, of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread.
Okay, so if we believe the Bible, then we understand that everybody on the earth comes from one of these three sons, period. There were no stowaways on the boat, no angelic beings created some other people on some type of side plane, none of that. Only these three sons populate the earth. So now, let's do this. Let's now go to a reference. This is the Webster's New Collegiate Dictionary, and we're going to look at the definition of Gentile. This is the definition of Gentile. Okay, go ahead.
A person of a non-Jewish nation or of a non-Jewish faith. A Christian as distinguished from a Jew.
Okay, so according to the dictionary, the definition of a Gentile is a person of a non-Jewish nation or non-Jewish faith. The problem with that is we're going to go to Genesis 10 and look at the first time it's mentioned. The problem with that is the first time the name Gentile is mentioned, there is no Jew. There is no Christian at this time. So how could that be the definition of the word? It's impossible. Genesis 10. Let's go to Genesis 10. In verse 1. Genesis 10 and verse 1. Genesis 10 and verse 1. Okay, brother, go ahead.
Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The son of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Rephaz, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodamim. And by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their family, and their nation.
Okay, so what we read in the Bible is by these sons, talking about the sons of Japheth, were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, and their nations. Because again, that is how the Lord looks at us. He looks at us divided by our lands, after our tongues, after their families, in their nations. That's how the Lord looks at it. But we notice he's breaking down the lineage of Noah's three sons, and he called the descendants of Japheth Gentile. That is the biblical definition of a Gentile, a son of Japheth. And we're going to see that throughout the Bible and in other references. But again, if the definition of a Gentile was, like we read in this dictionary, a non-Jew or someone of a non-Jewish faith, or the distinction of a Christian even, how could that be possible when at this time you don't even have the Jews yet? Jacob hasn't even come on the scene yet, and his name hasn't been changed to Israel, and he hasn't had 12 sons. So how could that cannot be the definition of this name. the original definition of the word Gentiles is referring to the sons of Japheth. That's why the lesson is called the Times of the Gentiles, because guess who's running the world right now? The descendants of Japheth. Period. Period. That's who's running it. That's whose time we're in. The world used to be in the time of the descendants of Ham, which is why you got all those pharaohs and all those what we would call African nations, but they're actually Hamite nations that were in control of all the lands and in control of everything. And then there was a short period of time where the descendants of Shem, which is who Israel comes from, it was a time where the Lord allowed Shem's descendants to come in and knock off Ham, and we took over our lands, and that happened for a short time, but we messed that up. And then became the time of the Gentiles, where the power and the rulership of everything got into the hands of the sons of Japheth. So now, we're going to continue to read the synopsis of the rest of the sons. We read, it said, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. Read verse 6.
And the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, and Put, and Canaan.
Okay, so now he went to his other sons, the sons of Ham, right? Now we're not going to read all the sons of Ham because we're not dealing with them today, but skip down to verse 20 and read the summary of that. Go ahead.
These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, and their countries, and in their nations.
After their families, after their tongues, and their countries, and their nations. Notice he didn't say nothing about no Gentiles, right? So these Hamites are not Gentiles. They are Hamites. The Gentiles are the sons of Japheth. Now, keep reading. Read verse 21.
Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, Ashur, and Pasad, and Lud, and Aram.
Okay, skip down to verse. So now we're dealing with the sons of Shem, which is the last listed son of Noah. Let's skip down to that summary. Verse 31.
These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations.
Again, notice he's talking about their nations because they got other sons, and as those sons have sons, they become nations. But notice, he didn't say nothing about those Gentiles with them either, did he? Keep going, verse 32.
These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood.
So that's it. From these names that we're reading come forth every person on the planet, period. And the names that come from the son of Japheth, the first son named, those are the Gentiles. That is what a Gentile is, a descendant of the sons of Japheth. So now, let's go into some more history books, and let's get an idea of who that is. Who are the sons of Japheth? We're going to read Japheth from Zondervan's Pictorial Bible Dictionary. And you can read that whole thing. This is Japheth from the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary. Okay, brother, go ahead.
Japheth, God will enlarge. He was older than Shem, but comes third in some lists of these three sons. Shem, however, is usually named first. Japheth and his wife were saved in the ark. He aided Shem in covering the naked body of his drunken father. He is the progenitor of the more remote northern people or southeastern Europe. That he was to occupy the tents of Shem is thought to refer to conquest of the Greeks who were descendants of Japheth. This he did during the days of Assyria's power. Okay, so what is this book telling us? It's telling us that Japheth is a progenitor or the father of some people from Europe, right? It said from the southernmost region of Europe, and it said also the Greeks. So now we get more of a pinpoint understanding of who the Gentiles are, right? Keep going. He had 7 sons whose descendants occupied the isles of the Gentiles. Hellenists are Greeks, an area including Asia Minor and Upper Greece. So we got Asia Minor, Upper Greece. We get more pinpointed on who the Gentiles are. Keep going. Okay, now we saw that it says some parts of Europe, Asia Minor, and Greece, right? So now we're going to do Japheth, the Japhethites, from
the Funk and Waggles New Encyclopedia, page 446. This is Japhethites, because we need to get more than one witness to get an understanding on what the truth is. And this is all open-ended information. You can get it. These are basic encyclopedias. You can get these anywhere. You can go to a library and it's going to all tell you the same thing. This information is out there. Go ahead and read that.
Japhethites. And etymology, loose designation for the Caucasian people of Europe.
So the Japhethites is a loose designation for the Caucasian people of Europe. So that's agreeing with the first book we read, right? Mm-hmm. Keep going.
And certain parts of Asia.
And certain parts of Asia. So we're starting to understand who the Gentiles are, right? Mm-hmm. This is a bloodline nationality of people because they are coming from Japheth. And that's what we saw in Genesis 10, right? Mm-hmm. The Lord wasn't dealing with whether you believe this or whether you believe that in Genesis 10. He was dealing with who you come from a bloodline standpoint when he talked about the Gentiles. Mm-hmm. Right? So we got to understand, how has this definition of Gentiles gotten lost in the world? But everybody now understands or thinks that a Gentile is somebody who's not a Jew. Well, what happened to all of this information we read now, right? It's clear in the Bible.
That's right.
First time you read it, it's breaking down lineage. This is talking about a bloodline of people. That's who the Gentiles are. Mm-hmm. Keep going. And he just told us that it's the people in Europe and certain parts of Asia, the Caucasians, right? Mm-hmm. Keep going.
Supposed to be descendants from Japheth, a son of the Old Testament patriarch Noah.
That's it. Okay. So as we see, the Caucasians, the Europeans, those are descendants of Japheth, right? And this is ironclad proof. Ironclad proof. And by the way, these are all written by Gentiles, right? Because the Gentiles run it, right? We don't have no printing presses, no publishing companies. We don't have none of that. No distribution companies to be able to get this information out. All of these encyclopedias, you can see who wrote them. They all Gentiles. But this is ironclad proof, without a doubt, that Jesus could not have been a Caucasian, because Jesus came from the descendants of Shem, and we see that the Europeans come from the descendants of Japheth.
That's right.
So that's just a fact. It don't mean that, of course, Jesus came to save the world, but just to get the facts clear, he did not come from Japheth, he came from Shem. So now we're going to get some more information. Let's go to the World Book Encyclopedia, page 308, and this is about Noah. You can read between the highlights. Yeah.
Oh, between the highlights?
Yeah, that whole highlighted thing.
Okay.
From here to here.
Yeah. Noah's sons were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem became father of the Shemitic people, including the Hebrews. Other Shemitic people includes the Arabs and the Assyrians.
All of that is true. We can verify that with the Bible. Keep going.
Ham was the father of the Hamitic people, and Japhet was the father of people of Asia Minor and Europe.
Okay, so again, all these books are saying the same thing, right? Japheth is the father of Europeans and in some parts of Asia as well. Right? So that is the biblical definition of a Gentile. So now, let's go even deeper. We're going to look at another World Book Encyclopedia. Since it says that Japheth is the progenitor of the peoples of Europe, let's read. We're going to read a list of in the entry in this World Book Encyclopedia of Europe, all the countries that are listed in there. Go ahead. You can just read all of the names.
List the names. Okay. Albania, Andorra, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Finland, France, German, East German, West German, Great Britain, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg. No, this
Liechtenstein.
Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Russia, San Marino, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, Vatican City, and Yugoslavia.
Okay, so according to these books we're reading, which were written by Gentiles, These are the Gentiles. All these nations that they just named, those are Gentiles, according to the Bible, the descendants of Japheth, because they know where they landed. They know where they went. There's only one people whose history and lineage has been erased, and that's the children of Israel. Everybody else know their lineage, which is why it's in these books. But this is open, clear knowledge. But according to the Bible, that's who the Gentiles are. Europeans, and even some people in parts of Asia, right? So now, and notice that Vatican City is in there. So we can see, we know who's in the position of power, right, today. A lot of those countries that were named are in super positions of power now, right? That's why the title of the lesson is The Times of the Gentiles. We are simply living in the time that the Lord is allowing the Gentiles to run it. That's it. End of story. It's not, so we're going to go even further. Let's go to the New Compact Bible Dictionary, and we're going to look at the entry called Javan, which Javan was one of the sons of Japheth in this Genesis 10, chapter 2. So this is the New Compact Bible Dictionary, page 267, Javan. Okay, brother, go ahead.
Javan, a region settled by one of the sons of Japheth. Javan was the name of his country to Ezekiel, who saw it as an important trade center. So Javan came to be named of Greece to be Hebrew, to the Hebrews.
So to the Hebrews, they started calling Greece Javan because they knew who the father of the Greeks were, right? But that's showing us that that whole region and those people come from Japheth. Therefore, they are Gentiles. That's what they are. Keep going.
During the period 700 to 630 BC, the Ionians carried an existent trade in the Near East. Hence, all people of Greece were called Javan.
So all people of Greece were called Javan. So again, they knew who the father was, right? I even read in some of these nations' folklore. I read somewhere in one of these books that in their folklore it talks about Japheth and Javan and Tubal being their fathers in like their their folklore. So now we're going to read one more entry in this book. This is Madai, who is another son of Japheth, and we're going to see where his people settled. So again, you got all these different nations, and the nations are determined by the sons and the sons that they have, and they're migrating to different places, but they all fall under the umbrella of one of Noah's three sons. And again, we're defining who the Gentiles are, because the title of the lesson is The Times of the Gentiles, which is what we are living in today. So now we're going to read one more entry called Madai, which is another son of Japheth. Okay, go ahead.
Madai, a people descended from Japheth. They occupied the same area which modern Iran does today, and were called the Medes.
So we see the Medes, the people of modern Iran. You talk about Medes, you talk about Persians. Those are all Gentiles. Those are all Gentiles. They all come from the same son of Noah. So again, this ain't necessarily about color. That's not how the Lord look at it. He look at it as household, nation, family, who your father is, where you come from. That's the umbrella you fall under. So even if the Medes, the Persians, those in Iran, those are Gentiles. Is that it? Okay. So now, let's go back to the Bible and go to Daniel 8. Daniel 8. Because again, the lesson is called The Times of the Gentiles. So we need to see, we already established how God operates. And we already established clearly who the Gentiles are. The Gentiles are Europeans and anybody else, in certain parts of Asia that fall under the umbrella of the descendants of Japheth. That's who the Gentiles are. Not a non-believer, not a Christian, not a non-Jew. Now, we do know that ultimately, there was a slang there was a slang connotation given to the term Gentiles, and we can see that clearly in the Bible. But how has the actual definition been lost? That has also been maintained fully and strongly in the Bible. Thus, it has been misrepresented in a lot of scripture. People not understanding who that's talking about when it's talking about Gentiles. We can't lose the actual definition for a loose slang terminology, right? Okay, Daniel 8, because we're going to verify now, according to the Bible, what times we living in. And the Bible and the Lord is going to tell us completely, because he's going to tell us who is going to run it until he comes. Daniel 8 and verse 15. Daniel 8 and verse 15. Okay, brother, go ahead.
And it came to pass, when I, even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then, behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man.
Okay, so we're not going to go into great detail on these visions Daniel has. That's a whole nother lesson. We'll be here for a whole nother couple days breaking down these visions. But we're just going to touch on them to see what they're telling us. So this is Daniel having a vision, and an angel is coming to give him the understanding of it. Skip to verse 19. Okay, go ahead.
And he said, behold, I will make thee know that what shall be in the last end of the indignation.
So he's going to tell them what's going to happen all the way to the end, right? Mm-hmm. The last end of the indignation. Again, that's what we said. That's how God operates. He give everybody some time. Then when that time is over with, he'll judge them. He'll pour out his wrath. If you did wrong, he rewards you if you did right. And then it's over with. Then it's about living his way, period. So he said, I will make you to know what shall happen in the last end, the indignation. Keep going.
For at the time appointed, the end shall be. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia.
All right, so in these visions, just as a synopsis, when you see a beast or an animal, that usually represents a kingdom, and the horns usually represent a king. So the angel's breaking down this vision, and Daniel said, the ram thou sawest having two horns are the kings of who? Media and Persia. So we know we're dealing with Gentiles. Right? The vision that Daniel's getting is talking about some kingdoms that's going to take you all the way to the end. And he's already starting with some Gentiles. Keep going, verse 21.
And the rough goat is the king of Greece.
There goes some more Gentiles, right? That's why this is the time of the Gentiles. He's breaking down visions at the latter end, and he's showing that the power is going to be in their hands. Keep going.
And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation.
So four kingdoms out of that what nation? He's talking about these Gentile nations, right? So when that horn or that king is broken, you're gonna have four more kings jump up, but they all gonna be out of this nation. That's what he said, right? Mm-hmm. And we saw how the Lord deals with nations. You talking bloodline, you talk about who is your father. So he's talking Gentiles. Keep going.
But not in his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full.
Notice what he said. When the transgressors are what? Come to the full. What does that mean? That means it's over with. Everything you done did has come to the hilt, and now is about to be judgment. So he said, this is the end, right? He said, the latter time of the kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full. Keep going.
A king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up.
So you're going to have an evil king ending this whole thing out, right? Mm-hmm. Keep going.
And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people.
So again, other lessons let us know that this is talking about none other than the Great Tribulation. This is talking about that time where it's going to be so bad on this earth, you're going to wish you weren't even on the earth, right? But again, this is all in the midst of the end, and he's counting it down, and he's showing us this is all coming from, it says this is all going to come out of these nations, right? This is all coming from these Gentile nations. Keep going.
And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many.
Right. So again, they the ones, the Gentiles at this time are in control, just like I said, Ham was in control. The Pharaohs was dealing with a whole bunch of paganism, right? And the Lord showed his hand at that time to the children of Israel. And then when the children of Israel left, guess what? A whole bunch of other people left with them, right? That weren't Israelites, right? So it ain't about the people. It's just when it's your time and you're doing it your way, devoid of God, you're going to come up with all this other crazy stuff, right?
That's right.
So we see no different in the time of the Gentiles. We see it's going to culminate with an evil king who's going to deal with dark sayings, and he's actually going to destroy the holy people. Keep going.
He shall also stand up against the prince or princess.
Notice who's coming after him though. It's not going into the hands of no other man per se. This is the prince of princes. That's talking about Jesus. So what did we just read? What did that let us know? That let us know that from that time, with that vision Daniel was having, when it goes from the Medes, it's going to go Gentile all the way down until Jesus comes. Because he said that dude, this evil king here, is going to stand against the prince of princes. Keep going.
But he shall be broken without hands.
Obviously, he's not going to win that battle, right? So now let's get back to Daniel 7. Go one chapter back to Daniel 7. So again, we see clearly that was talking about nothing but the sons of Japheth and how long they were going to be in power. Specifically, even what kings. Again, we got lessons that show specifically who that's talking about. But we know it's coming from those sons. And they're going to have it and be in control until the Lord comes. That's why the title of the lesson is The Times of the Gentiles. That's the times we're living in. They in control. Daniel 7 and verse 2. Daniel 7 and verse 2. Okay, brother, go ahead.
Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another.
So again, Daniel's having another vision. We could take 2 more days to deal directly with this. But we just scratching the surface to show who he's talking about in these visions. So he's having a vision of another beast. So you know, again, when you see beasts, it's talking about kingdoms. When we see horns, we talk about kings. Keep going.
The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it.
Okay, so you got one beast that's like a lion, right? Keep going.
And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh.
Okay, so you got one beast as a lion, a whole nother beast that looked like a bear, right? Keep going.
After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it.
So again, we're not getting directly into specifically who these beasts are referring to, but again, we're just showing Daniel's having visions that go all the way down to the end. Keep going.
After this I saw in the night vision, and beheld a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly.
Okay, so you got one beast like a lion, one like a bear, one like a leopard, and one so terrible you can't even liken it to any beast. Right? Keep going.
And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns.
So you got another beast that's so terrible, it's diverse, it's different from all the other beasts. And it's stamping stuff out, and it got 10 horns. Verse 8.
I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things.
So again, the horns represent kings. You had 10 kings, but then you have another little king. So this is a different type of king coming up out of this same system, right? And we see what that king's going to do. He's going to speak great things. He's going to speak great things. Verse 9.
I beheld till the thrones were cast down.
So again, we see all that going on, all those beasts which represent kingdoms, one after the other. Then it come to a very different type of king who seemed to be, speaking great things. But then, how does it end? I behold till the thrones were cast down. Right? So it's showing us again, this is going all the way to the end. Because the thrones are cast down by who? Keep going.
And the Ancient of Days did sit.
Who's the Ancient of Days? Who's been here forever? We talking God here, right? So again, we go beast, 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 horrible, terrible beast, God. That's what we seeing so far, right? That's letting us know. And we in the end time, so we are in the times of the Gentiles. Because we already see who the Lord is going to do this at the hand of. Keep going.
Whose garment was white as snow, and the hairs of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire.
That sounds like a problem, don't it? Okay, now, let's go to Revelation 13. We were in the Old Testament. Now let's go to the New Testament. Revelation 13. Revelation 13. So we're going to jump all the way to the end of the Bible. We were reading Daniel, which is in the Old Testament. That was a long time ago, prophesying about the end time. Now we're going to go to the end of the book and see what that's talking about. So we saw in Daniel, you saw a beast that was like a lion, a beast like a bear, a beast like a leopard, and one you couldn't describe, right? 4 different ones. Revelation 13 and verse 1. Okay, brother, go ahead.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns.
So we got a beast here, right, in Revelation. The Lord don't change. He's dealing with his servants the same way. He's showing the same type of visions, right? I stood at the sands of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Keep going.
And upon his horn 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion.
So you got one beast now who got all the characteristics of the beast, or the 4 beasts in Daniel, in one at the very end. That's no coincidence, right? Because again, it's talking about these kingdoms, which all basically coming from the same thing. They're all Gentile kingdoms, all coming from the same system. Keep going.
And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority.
Because when you're not operating under the guidance of God, there's only one other God. There is no middle ground. It ain't no, I'm not dealing with the Lord, but I'm not dealing with Satan. It's either I'm dealing with the Lord or I'm dealing with Satan. Satan ain't letting nobody slide like, hey, you ready to deal with me yet? No. If we not dealing with God, who else we dealing with? So the dragon is giving this beast his power, seat, and great authority. Keep going. Oh, skip down to verse 5.
And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy.
That's what we read in Daniel, right? It said there was a little horn that was going to come up, and it's going to speak great things. This is getting in more detail, though. It said this beast was given a mouth speaking great blasphemy. Keep going.
And power was given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months.
So now we got a time period on this actual end time, this very last days thing, right? It said this beast, which is the culmination of all the other ones we read, because it said it was like a leopard with the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion, right? And the dragon gave him a seat of great power and great authority. But we said that it was given a mouth to speak blasphemy and was given power 40 and 2 months, right? Okay, now let's go to Revelation 11. Revelation 11. So again, we started this in Daniel 8. And we saw, instead of dealing with leopards and bears and lions, it was talking about goats. But it was talking about the king of Grecia and the king of the Medes. And it went all the way down to Christ, right? Then we saw a whole bunch of other different beasts. Again, we're just skimming the surface. We're not going into what they mean. We're just looking at the timeline. We saw the lion, the bear, and the leopard, and the dreadful beast. Then we saw Christ, right? Then we went to Revelation, saw the same thing. We saw one beast with the lion, bear, and leopard attributes. Then, and it's saying that it's going to be given the time of 40 and 2 months to really, really get it cracking at the very, very end, right? Revelation 11 and verse 1. Revelation 11 and verse 1. Okay, brother, go ahead.
And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple, leave out, and measure it not.
Okay, so this is the Lord again giving John a vision, and he's telling them, he gave him a reed and told him to rise and measure the temple, but the court leave out. Keep going.
For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall be tread underfoot 40 and 2 months.
So that courtway is going to be given to who? The Gentiles. And we know who the Gentiles are, right? And we know we talking about last days. And we know the Gentiles are winning. That's why this is called the times of the Gentiles, right? We just trying to identify what's going on around us. So he said, it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread how long? 40 and 2 months. That's the same time period that it gave that beast that had those three attributes, that had the mouth that was speaking great things, right? Great blasphemy. Just to show that this is talking about end time and not something that happened in the past. Read verse 3.
And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days.
Right, and that's 42 months as well, right? So he's saying when that courtway is given to the Gentiles to tread underfoot 42 months, he is also going to give power to his 2 witnesses, because he's not going to let the evil ones have a mouth speaking great things and not have his prophets out here counterbalancing that, speaking the truth. So in that same time period, he's going to allow those evil kings and that evil king to speak blasphemies against God, but he's also going to have his 2 witnesses that will be prophesying that same time. Did you finish that?
Yes.
In sackcloth. So we know that has not happened yet. This is talking about the future. So now, let's go to Luke 21. So we just did that to show who is going to run it all the way down to the end. Because if we had kept reading, we would see that those 2 witnesses would prophesy for that 40 and 2 months, and then they would be killed. But then the Lord was going to resurrect them and call them up. And that's it. After that, the Lord is coming back. So again, we just wanted to show that the Bible is saying, from the time of those visions, like that vision that Daniel saw, from that time all the way down to the end, this thing has been given into the hands of the sons of Japheth. So we know Ham had it. Everybody knows that, right? You still got people walking around today with pyramids. You got pyramids on the dollar. You got pyramids everywhere. The remnants of that is still exists. Everybody know Ham had it, right? We could read in the Bible, Shem had it for a minute through Israel and even other nations. But now it's the times of the Gentiles. And when it's over with that, it's going to be God's kingdom forever, period. And anyone in the midst of any of those kingdoms that did what they were supposed to do concerning God, whether we be Jew or Gentile or anything, can be a part of God's kingdom. But again, we just establishing the facts of who a Gentile is. Because we have people out here saying all kinds of things about Gentiles, right? We read the definition saying that somebody's not a Jew, which, again, we can see loosely. We're going to read examples of that where loosely that's kind of the case, but that does not submerge and do away with the actual definition of a Gentile, which is valid all through the Bible, right? And we got people saying that the Gentiles are actually just some more Israelites, which can't be the case, right? They got to be sons of Japheth. If we talking bloodline, they got to be the sons of Japheth. So we need to clear up all this confusion. So now, Luke 21 and verse 5. Luke 21 and verse 5. Okay, brother, go ahead.
And as some spake of the temple, how it was adored with goodly stones and gifts, he said.
Okay, so now we back in the past. This is when Jesus was walking on the earth, and there was an actual temple there. What we read in Revelation was future, right? That's talking about a temple being built. But this is talking about the temple that was. Keep going.
As for these things which ye behold, the days will come, in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another, that shall not be thrown down.
Okay, so Jesus is saying, you are happy about what you see with this temple. You real glad, but I'm telling you right now, all of it's going to get cast down anyway. That's what he said, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, keep going.
And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass?
Okay, notice what he got asked here. This is the account of Luke, and in the account of Luke, it is focusing on them asking Jesus, when shall these things be? What things? Talking about the temple being destroyed. And what is the sign when these things shall come to pass? What things? Talk about the temple being destroyed, right? So that's the focus of this particular passage. Skip down to verse 20 and go ahead.
And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh.
Okay, so when Jerusalem gets compassed with armies, that's when it's about to be over, right? Can we take a guess on whose armies those are going to be? They're going to be Gentiles. Because that's who's running it. That's who they had to deal with in the New Testament. Who were the children of Israel dealing with? Who did they have to deliver Jesus to? Right? And who compassed the temple in 70 AD? We're going to read that. Keep going.
Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. And let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And not let them that are in the countries enter therein. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For these shall be great. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people.
So the time was up for the children of Israel in this capacity. The Lord kept trying to give the children of Israel a chance to do right, and He would taper off the punishment and ration out the punishment till it was just no more. And now, when this temple goes, then everybody's going into captivity, period, end of story. So the time was up for them. Keep going.
And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captives into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
So Jerusalem's going to be trodden down by who? The Gentiles. And that is exactly who did it. We're going to read in the encyclopedia now. Let's go to Jerusalem from the World Book Encyclopedia and see who actually plundered the temple in 70 AD. You can read everything that's underlined. This is Jerusalem from the World Book Encyclopedia, page 8. Okay, go ahead.
Jerusalem remained prosperous until the Romans conquered it in 63 BC. The Romans set up Herod as king. He ordered the reconstruction of the temple on a large scale. Shortly after the death of Jesus, the Jews started fighting against Romans' rule. After 6 years of bitter fighting, the Jews were completely crushed. In AD 70, the Roman Emperor Titus ordered the city and temple destroyed.
Okay, so we see who did it, right? The Romans, right? And that was on that list of what we saw. We know Romans are Europeans, right? So literally, the Jerusalem was trodden down by the Gentiles. It says, until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So we know who's in control of even that whole situation, right? When we look over there, you got Ishmael fighting over land with the so-called Jew who happens to be Esau. They fighting over who can do what and how can things happen. But guess who they got to go to get permission to do what they're doing? They got to go to the Gentiles because the Gentiles run it. Right? So that's why the title of the lesson is called The Times of the Gentiles. So we just read that it said Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And we read before that in Revelation, it said that the courtway of the temple is going to be given to the Gentiles 42 months. And we know after that 42 months, which is that 3.5-year tribulation, after that, it is over. That's when the Lord comes back. Right? We saw that in every account we read. Okay, so now, let's go to Luke 18. Because again, we're just trying to get clarity on who the Gentiles are and who is in control now. That's who's in control. The Gentiles are in control. That's a more specific way to say it. You know, like I said, everybody want to say the white man, but that's an ignorant statement. That is not definitive enough. We talking the sons of Japheth are the ones that the Lord is allowing to have that control right now. Luke 18 and verse 31. Luke 18 and verse 31. Okay, brother, go ahead.
Then he took unto him the 12 and said unto them, Behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and all things that are written by the prophets concerning the Son of Man shall be accomplished. For he shall be delivered unto the Gentiles, and shall be mocked, and spitefully entreated, and spitted on.
So who? Jesus is going to be delivered to who? the Gentiles. And some specific stuff is going to happen to him by these Gentiles. He's going to be mocked, spitefully entreated, and spitted on, right? So again, we know who he's talking about now, and we know who did it, right?
Right.
Keep going.
And they shall scourge him and put him to death, and the third day he shall rise again.
Okay, now let's go to Matthew 27, and let's look at the account of that and see who he was delivered to. Matthew 27 and verse 1. Matthew 27 and verse 1. Matthew 27 and verse 1. Okay, brother, go ahead.
When the morning was come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death.
Okay, so we know those are the Israelites, right? Those are the Jews, right? They the ones that took counsel to put him to death. Keep going.
And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him unto Pontius Pilate, the governor.
Who they deliver him to? We read the other scripture said he's going to be delivered to the Gentiles, right? And we reading here he was delivered to who? Pontius Pilate. Well, who was Pontius Pilate? He was a Gentile, meaning from a bloodline standpoint. He was a descendant of the sons of Japheth. Keep going. Oh, wait, do we
skip to 24?
Okay, skip to 24. Okay, go ahead.
When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just man. See ye to it.
Yeah, so Pilate didn't want no parts of crucifying Jesus because he knew it was wrong. Right? We don't see no Hebrew Israelites reading this verse when they want to say the white man is the devil, right? Because this white man did not want to have no parts of crucifying Jesus, and all the Israelites did. Notice what they said, verse 25.
Then answered all the people and said, his blood be on us and on our children.
They don't even know what they said.
No, they don't.
They have no idea what they said or what they did. Right? His blood be on us and on our children. Keep going.
Then released he Barnabas unto them, and when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him.
So who scourged? That's what it said was going to happen, right? He's going to be delivered to the Gentiles, and they're going to be scourged. Keep going.
He delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the common hall and gathered unto him the whole band of soldiers. And they stripped him and put on him a scarlet robe. And when they had plaited a crown of thorns, they put it upon his head and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. And they spit upon him and took the reed and smote him on the head.
Yeah, Jesus went through it. He went through it. And he told them, literally, specifically, all this stuff was going to happen. But he also said who was going to be happened by, right? And we see who's doing it. Keep going.
And after that, they had mocked him. They took the robe off him and put his own raiments on him and led him away to be crucified.
Okay.
To crucify him.
Skip down to verse 34.
They gave him vinegar to drink, mingled with gall, and when he had tasted thereof, he would not drink. And they crucified him and parted his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet. They parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots.
Okay, skip down to verse 54. Now this is after he was crucified, or after he died. Verse 54.
Now when the centurion and they that were with him, watching Jesus, saw the earthquake and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, Truly this was the Son of God.
Right. So again, we see who he was in the hands of the Gentiles, the Romans. You even had Roman soldiers, a centurion here standing by watching. So again, we see who this is talking about, but they were the ones in control at the time, right? So the Jews, even when the Jews wanted to do that to Jesus, they had to go and get permission and have it carried out by who? By the Gentiles. Why? Same reason the title lesson, because it's the time of the Gentiles. They running it. So now, Let's go to Acts chapter 10. Acts chapter 10. Acts chapter 10 and verse 1. Acts chapter 10 and verse 1. Okay, brother, go ahead.
There was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of the band called the Italian band.
Okay, so now we're reading about somebody named Cornelius. This is in the book of Acts. This is after the Lord told the disciples, go into all nations and preach the gospel, right? Whereas before he told them just deal with the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because he had to get his priesthood together. He had to get the teachers together to go and teach the world. So now they're going to teach in the world, but they're starting with who? They start with who's around them. They got Gentiles all around them. So we're dealing now with somebody in Acts chapter 10. It say he's a part of the band called what? The Italian band. That was on that list we read, the Europeans, right? So that he is a Gentile. Literally, not just because he's not a physical Jew. He's a Gentile because he is a literal physical descendant of the sons of Japheth. And they running it now. They running the world. So, you know, they in regards to Gentiles now, when you talking Gentiles, they the ones that's running it, right?
That's right.
Okay. So he was in a band called the Italian band, verse 2.
A devout man, and one that feared God with all his house, which gave much alms to the people, and prayed to God always. He saw in a vision, evidently about the 9th hour of the day, an angel of God coming into him and saying unto him, Cornelius.
Okay, so Cornelius was so devout that when he prayed to God, the Lord literally dispatched an angel to him. Do we understand? You know, has anybody, I haven't had no angels dispatched to me where I could say that's what happened. Right? So an angel going to come and have a conversation with him. Keep going.
And when he looked on him, he was afraid and said, What is it, Lord? And he said unto him, Thy prayers and thy alms are come up for memorial before God. And now send men to Joppa and call for one Simon, whose surname is Peter.
So notice what's going on. We got a Gentile who's devout, so much so that the Lord is answering his prayer by sending him an angel to talk to him. And what is the angel telling him? The angel is telling him to go find Peter, right? This ain't in the lesson, but read verse 6.
He lodged with one Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the seaside. He shall tell thee what thou oughtest to do.
So you mean that they went through all that? God went through all that, sending him an angel to tell him to go find an Israelite to get some instruction. Is that right? Could that angel have not given him instruction himself? We saw him do that in Daniel, right?
That's right.
When the angel came to Daniel, the angel said, I'm going to give you the understanding. The angel came to Cornelius, the Gentile, told him, go find Peter. Why? Because God has a protocol. He chose the nation of Israel to be the ones to teach the rest of the sons of Adam. And the Lord set that up and is not going to break that. Everything we understand about God, we get from the Bible, and the Bible was written by nothing but Israelites. Right? Even Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles. Why do you even need an apostle to the Gentiles? Why not just have a Gentile teach the Gentiles? Because that goes against the protocol of God. The protocol of God is he chose the nation of Israel, the Jews, to be the example. He came and gave his law, statutes, and commandments. And we were supposed to be the ones to show and exemplify and teach the rest of the nation. So that's why the angel is telling Cornelius, the Italian, the Gentile, to go and find Peter. Now let's see what Peter says to him. Let's skip to verse 21. Okay, brother, go ahead.
Then Peter went down to the men which were sent unto him from Cornelius, and said, Behold, I am he whom you seek. What is the cause thereof? Therefore you are come. And they said, Cornelius the centurion, a just man, and one that fears God, and of a good report among all the nations of the Jews, was warned from God by a holy angel to send for thee into his house and to hear words of thee.
Okay, skip down to verse 34. So the angel told him to go hear words from Peter, right? Verse 34.
Then Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth, I perceive that God is no respecter of person.
Right, God don't care. In terms of salvation, God, it doesn't matter what bloodline you're from. What matters is that we get the understanding, the proper understanding on how to serve God, and we do that. It just so happens that the Lord sent the proper understanding through the nation of Israel by giving his law, statutes, and commandments. So in some ways it does matter who is who, because if Jesus says, which he said in John chapter 4, salvation is of the Jews, meaning to get the right understanding of what you need to do to get salvation, you need to look at what I gave the Jews. If we don't know who the Jews are, who are we looking at? Right? We can get confused with that, right? If we think some people are Jews and they're actually Gentiles, then we might get confusing information, right? Okay, so it does matter in that regard, but in terms of what it takes to get salvation, the bloodline doesn't matter. What matters is getting the right understanding, right? So he said, of a truth, I perceive that God is no respecter of persons, verse 35.
But in every nation, he that fears him and worketh righteousness is respected.
No matter what nation you are, what matters is that we fear him and work righteousness in every nation. So it don't even matter who's in control. If the Gentiles are in control, it's some Gentiles who are going to serve God, right? If the Hamites are in control, there's also going to be some Hamites who are going to serve God, right? Keep going.
Is accepted with him.
Yeah.
54.
No. Go.
Just keep going on.
Yeah, keep going.
But in every nation he fears him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him.
The
word which God sent unto the children of Israel.
Who did God send it to? The children of Israel, right? That don't mean the children of Israel are going to get a pass. Matter of fact, the judgment starts with us. It starts with the children of Israel. But the word was sent through them, right? Unto the children of Israel. Keep going.
Preaching peace by Jesus Christ. He is Lord of all. That word I say, you know, which was published throughout all Judea and began from Galilee after the baptism which John preached. How God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Ghost and with power, who went about doing good and healing all that were oppressed of the devil, for God was with him.
Okay, skip down to verse 44.
While Peter yet spake these words, the Holy Ghost fell on them all which heard the word. And they of the circumcision which believed were astonished, as many as came with Peter, because that on the Gentiles were also poured out the gift of the Holy Ghost.
So he referred to them, right? He said the Gentiles was poured out the Holy Ghost, right? And we know we talking about Cornelius, who was an Italian, and the people that was with him, right? So there goes that idea that even some people think that a Gentile, the definition of that is a non-believer, right? Some people say, well, you know, if you're not that's the Gentiles are like regular people. Non-believers, the heathen, those that don't know God, right? But we see some people here who know God, they're still being called Gentiles. Because we talking bloodline here. That's what we talking about. These are the sons of Japheth. Right? Are we finished with that?
Yes.
Verse 46.
For they heard them speak with tongues and magnified God. Then answered Peter.
Okay, that's good. Let's go to Acts chapter 9. And we almost wrapping up. Acts chapter 9. But we're going to start looking at Paul now. Because Paul, everybody knows, he was the apostle to the Gentiles. Right? So we know Paul was on a specific mission to go to these people and open it up. And again, the Gentiles were running the world at the time. So you go and you open it up to the people that run the world, then, you know, the resources are endless. Right? Acts chapter 9 and verse 11. Acts chapter 9 and verse 11. Okay, brother, go ahead.
And the Lord said unto him, Arise and go into the streets which is called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul, of Tyrus, for behold, he prayeth, and has seen in a vision a man named Ananias coming in and putting his hands on him that he might receive his sight. Then Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard by many of this man how much evil he has done to thy saints at Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief priests to bind all that call on thy name. But the Lord said unto him.
Okay, so the Lord is telling this man who he's sending to Paul to give him his sight back and to let him know that it's time for him to do his thing. He's saying, I don't really want to go deal with him because Paul was arresting and killing people who were calling on the name of Jesus. But the Lord said unto him, keep going.
But the Lord said unto him, go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me.
So the Lord chose Paul to do what? Keep going.
To bear my name before the Gentiles.
To bear his name before who? The Gentiles, right? Keep going.
And kings and the children of Israel.
So to bear his name before Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. And when we go into the book of Acts and all through the rest of the Bible, that is exactly what Paul did, right? We know Paul stood before kings. We know Paul dealt with some Jews. But when you look at Paul's travels, take a map and look at his journeys, where did he go? He didn't go to the tip of Africa, right? He went in the European nations. That's where he went. And we're going to see that. We're going to see him say that. That's who he was dealing with. So that's further information letting us know who the Gentiles are specifically. Again, we know there's a loose use of the word encompassing everybody. We know that. We're going to look at that. But that does not do away with the actual definition of what Gentiles are. Like we said, the first time you see it, it ain't no Jew. It ain't no Christian. First time you see it, we see it in the table of nations talking about bloodlines. So are we finished with that?
Yes, sir. Okay,
Acts 23. Acts 23. So all you got to do is look at where Paul went and who he dealt with. We talking the sons of Japheth. That's who Paul was dealing with. Acts 23 and verse 11. Acts 23 and verse 11. Okay, brother, go ahead.
And the night following, the Lord stood by him and said, be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so must thou be witness also at Rome.
So he giving us specific places, right? He said you're going to bear my name before kings and Gentiles in Israel, right? So now he's telling them, look, be of good cheer. You testify to me in Jerusalem, that's Israel, right? Now you got to go where? To Rome. We talking Europeans. That's what we talking about, right?
That's right.
That's what we talking about, the sons of Japheth. We talking Gentiles. Let's go to Romans 15. Romans 15. Romans 15 and verse 15. Romans 15 and verse 15. Okay, brother, go ahead.
Nevertheless, brethren, I have written the more boldly unto you in some sort, as putting you in mind, because of the grace that is given to me of God, that I should be the minister of Jesus Christ to the Gentiles, ministering the gospel of God, that the offering up of the Gentiles might be acceptable, being sanctified by the Holy Ghost.
So the Lord Paul is trying to get, his job is to get the Gentiles in order in terms of how to serve God, right? How to do it right. Keep going.
I have therefore whereof I made glory through Jesus Christ in those things which pertain to God. For I will not dare to speak of any of those things which Christ has not wrought by me, to make the Gentiles obedient by word and deed, through mighty signs and wonders, by the power of the Spirit of God, so that from Jerusalem and round about unto Iconium I have fully preached the gospel of Christ. So have I strived to preach the gospel, not where Christ was named, lest I should build upon another man's foundation. But as it is written, to whom he was not spoken of, they shall see, and they that have not heard shall understand.
Skip down to verse 24.
Whensoever I take my journey into Spain, I will come to you, for I trust to see you in my journeys, and to be brought on my way hitherwards by you, if first I be somewhat filled with your company.
Okay, so who is Paul writing to? He's writing to some people in Spain. Right? These are Gentiles, literally. So he said, whensoever I take my journey into Spain, I'll come to you. Verse 25.
But now I go to Jerusalem to minister unto the saints. For it has pleased them, Macedonia and Achaia, to make a certain contribution for the poor saints which are at Jerusalem.
So he was somewhere else in Macedonia and Achaia. And those people made contributions to the Israelites in Jerusalem. Right? And that's what we read about Cornelius, right? Cornelius gave alms to the people and had a good report. That's what the Gentiles who were believers, that's what they were doing. They were helping out Israel because Israel was on the downswing in captivity. So it said it pleased them in Macedonia and Achaia to make certain contributions for the poor saints which are in Jerusalem. Verse 27.
He has pleased them verily, and their debtors they are. For if the Gentiles have been made partakers of their spiritual things.
So the Gentiles have been made partakers of the spiritual things. Israel got the word, and they sharing that with the Gentiles, who the Gentiles are running it, right? They got the resources. So he's saying, it hath pleased them verily. It pleased these people in these places to donate, because they're dead as they are. For if the Gentiles have been made partakers of the spiritual things, keep going.
Their duty is also to minister unto them in carnal things.
And that's what we saw. You can see all through the Bible, especially the New Testament, it talks about all kinds of believers who are Gentiles, who, again, they had the resources. They were helping out the saints, who, again, Israel's on the downswing at this time. Israel's in captivity. Israel's on the bottom, right? And we can see that today. That hasn't changed for Israel. This is not the time of Israel. This is the time of the Gentiles. Keep going.
When therefore I have performed this, I have sealed to them this fruit. I will come by you into Spain.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So we just want to show, where did Paul go? Again, you can take a map and look at where Paul went. He dealt with these Gentiles, literally. So now let's go to Romans 2. We're going to see an example of Romans 2, and we're going to start at verse 5. We're going to see an example of, when the term Gentile is being used just to gloss over everybody. But Gentile is not the only term that's been used like that. So just like any other term that's been used like that, we can't lose the true definition of the term, right? Because again, we'll get into a lot of confusion. Because we got people out here saying, from this verse that we're about to read, if you're not a Jew, then you're a Gentile, right? But that's not necessarily the case. That's not the case from a bloodline standpoint. And we're going to see the point of the scripture. Romans 2 and verse 5. Romans 2 and verse 5. Okay, brother, go ahead.
But after they hardness and impenitent heart treasures up unto themselves wrath against the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of God.
Okay, so we down to the end, right? So again, the Lord done come a whole way to teach his creation, his ways. And again, it was supposed to go through Israel, and it does go through Israel, but Israel messed up all along the way. Israel was never supposed to be divided into two kingdoms. Israel was never supposed to go into captivity, but all that happened, right? Keep going.
Who will render to every man according to his deeds? To them who by patient continuous in well doing seek for glory and honor and immortality, eternal life. But unto them that are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation, and wrath.
So he's gonna give everybody what they're dealing with, right? If you trying to get honor and immortality and eternal life, if we continue in well doing, then we can get that. But if you contentious and don't obey the truth and obey unrighteousness, verse 9,
tribulation and anguish unto every soul of man that doeth evil, Of the Jews first, and also of the Gentiles.
Of the Jews first, and also of the Gentiles. The reward is going to come like that, right? Keep going.
But glory, honor, and peace to every man that worketh good, to the Jews first, and to the Gentiles also.
So he's saying to the Jew first and to the Gentile, right? So some might read this and say, well, look, if the Gentiles only talking about the sons of Japheth, then what about, for instance, the sons of Ham, right? That's a good question. But we can also see in this statement, he's saying to the Jew first, right? What about the rest of the tribes of Israel? Because we know that technically a Jew is what? The descendant of the tribe of Judah. That's the technical term of a Jew, which that has not been lost, right? Even though the kingdoms got split, then it became the term of the southern kingdom, which was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, right? It took on another attribute. Then it became a term that encompassed all 12 tribes. If you're a Jew, because this can't be talking about just the tribe of Judah here, right? This saying to the Jew first, meaning Israel had it first. So Israel is going to be judged first, right? And also to the Gentile, meaning, this is talking about everybody at this point. In this scripture here, it's saying the Jew first, those who had the word of Israel, and the Gentile. But what we're trying to show in this lesson is this use does not override the actual just like the definition of Jew don't override, right? Because it's talking about all the tribes of Israel. That don't override what the definition of a Jew is. The use of it here don't override what the definition of a Gentile is. And we have seen clearly in this lesson who the Gentiles are. We're talking about the sons of Japheth. Let's wrap it up. Isaiah 66. So the Gentiles are running it. That's why it's called the Times of the Gentiles, the lesson. And again, the Jews were spearheading the word at that time. So that's why Paul said, look, to the Jew and also the Gentiles, because the Gentiles basically is running the world. Isaiah 66 and verse 15. Isaiah 66 and verse 15. Okay, brother, go ahead.
For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire.
So this is how it ends, right? We know when Egypt, with the time of Ham, it ended with the Lord's fury and the plagues, right? The times of the Gentiles is going to end like this. And the Lord is going to come himself with fire and with chariots and render his anger. Verse 16.
For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the gardens behind one tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh and an abomination, and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith the Lord.
The Lord got a problem with all the breaking of his laws, even the dietary law, right? The Lord say don't eat pork, and we eat pork. We're going to have a problem in this day, right? Verse 18.
For I know their works and their thoughts. It shall come that I will gather all nations and tongues, and they shall come and see my glory.
So the Lord is going to gather all nations to battle, right? It's going to culminate with all nations. Verse 19.
And I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nations. Tarshish, Pul, and Lud, that draw the bow, to Tubal and Javan.
Look who he named it, right? Where does Tarshish and Javan and Tubal, where does that come from? Who we talk? We talking Gentiles.
That's right.
Keep going.
To the isles afar off.
That's the isles of the Gentiles, right? Keep going.
That have not heard my fame, neither have seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles.
Right, because the Gentiles, again, the Gentiles are in control of all of this going on, all these other nations. So again, we know he's going to gather the nations, and there's other nations involved, obviously. But he's talking, when he's talking about Gentiles, because at this point, they running it, which is why the title of the lesson is called The Times of the Gentiles. Verse 20.
And they shall bring all your brethren for an offering unto the Lord out of all nations upon horses and in chariots and in litters and upon mules and upon swift beasts to my holy mountain Jerusalem, saith the Lord, as the children of Israel bringing an offering in a clean vessel unto the house of the Lord.
Okay, so this is where the times of the Gentiles is over with. They are no longer running it at this time. Or if we want to say it in lazy terms, the white man is not running it anymore as we read this. God is running it at this time. And God is going to restore the power of this earth to his government, and it's going to be comprised of the children of Israel, physically and spiritually at this time. Keep going.
And I will also take of them for priests and for Levites, saith the Lord.
He's going to take up some physical Israelites for priests and Levites, saith the Lord. Keep going.
For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain.
Notice we started with the nations. We started with the Gentiles, but we see it's going to go all the way up to the new heaven and the new earth, right? That's what we've been saying the whole time. That's how we know that right now we are living in the times of the Gentiles. And it's going to be this way until it ends. One more place, Isaiah 61. Isaiah 61 and verse 1. Isaiah 61 and verse 1. Okay, brother, go ahead.
The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives.
Notice what he's saying. It said, the Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth, right? Right? He said proclaiming liberty to the captives, right? Because who is in captivity right now? Not the Gentiles, the children of Israel are in captivity. Keep going.
And the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to confront all that mourn.
We just read about the day of vengeance in the last scripture, right? He said the Lord's going to come like that. So this is the end of the time of the Gentiles. This is when their time is up. Keep going.
To appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called tree of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. And they shall build the old wastes, they shall rise up the former desolations, and they shall repair the waste cities and desolations of many generations. And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks.
He's talking to Israel, right? So we know who's going to be on top at this time. This is going to be the time of the Lord, and God is the God of Israel. It said he's going to reign over the house of Jacob forever. It said that in the Gospels, right? That was prophesied over him as a child. He's going to reign over the house of Jacob forever. So at this time, the time of the Gentiles is over, and now is the time of God's kingdom, which is going to be comprised of Israel. Keep going.
And the sons of the aliens shall be your plowmen and your vine dressers, but ye shall be named the priests of the Lord. Men shall call you ministers of our God. You shall eat the riches of the Gentiles.
So who had the riches before this time? We talking Gentiles, right? You shall eat the riches of the Gentiles. Keep going.
And in their glory shall ye boast yourselves.
Right, so this is God's kingdom, and again, the government of God's kingdom is going to be comprised of Israel, who made it into the kingdom, and spiritual Israel, which will include Gentiles, and all other nations who did this thing right, are going to be the ruling class at that time. Verse 7.
For your shame shall be, for your shame ye shall have double.
Because the children of Israel right now in a predicament of what? Shame. For your shame ye shall have double. Keep going.
And for confusion.
And then the children, we in a state of confusion right now. It's definitely not our time right now. We on the bottom. But for our shame, we shall have double in the kingdom. And for our confusion, keep going.
They shall rejoice in their portion.
Okay, that is the times of the Gentiles. I hope you got some understanding in the mighty name of Jesus.